Welcome everyone, those of you who are just joining. Welcome to How Do PMP Examiners Think? How questions are written. Now, full disclosure, I have not written questions for the PMI. I have written, though, lots of questions for mock exams that people have taken in their attempt to ace the PMP exam. So when I share this content, don't think that I am speaking from the perspective of working for the PMI. I do not work and have not worked for the PMI, but I have insights as to how questions are written. And I want to sensitize you to this because I think it could be valuable as you prepare for your PMP exam. So let's take a look at a few things here. First of all, the best kept PMP exam prep secret is the PMP exam content outline. If you have not read the PMP exam content outline, you're doing wrong. This needs to be a massive part of your PMP prep. So I encourage you to download a copy of it and read it because it is going to help you as you prepare for the exam. The PMP exam breakdown is as follows. 13% of the exam is from initiating, 24% from planning, 31% from executing, 25% from monitoring and controlling, 7% from closing, giving you a total of 100%. Now, when you begin breaking it down piece by piece, you see that the PMI has broken down each domain into a set of tasks. I cannot overstate how important it is for you to look at these tasks and be sure that you can carry out these tasks before you exam. Let's take a look at a couple of these tasks here. Task 1, perform project assessment based upon available information, lessons learned from previous projects, and meetings with relevant stakeholders in order to support the evaluation of the feasibility of new products or services within the given assumptions and or constraints. So taking a look at task 1, folks, it is extremely important that you know where exactly this stuff is located in the PMBOK guide. If you don't know where it's located in the PMBOK guide, you should be going to hunt for it to find which page is this stuff really in. So what I'm going to do is break this apart bit by bit. We're going to open up the PMBOK guide and we're going to take a look at where this information is hidden in the PMBOK guide. So when you hear perform project assessment, what do you think they are talking about? By project assessment, we're not talking about an assessment of a project that is underway. We're talking about an assessment of a project that is being proposed. That's what we're talking about. See? So if a project is being proposed, project manager, you might be called upon to do an assessment. What kind of assessment is that? Well, that is a feasibility study, an economic feasibility study as well, which is a business case because your business case is an economic feasibility study, and you're trying to find out, is this thing a viable thing to do? Is this endeavor a viable thing to do? Does it make sense, or should we not do it? And you can find a lot of this information, folks, in the PMBOK guide, where the benefits management plan is discussed and where the business case is discussed. And I'm going to open up to my electronic copy and I'm going to show you where this stuff is. So why don't we go to the very first chapter in the PMBOK guide, and let's go to let's start off by looking around page 20 because I think that's where some of the information is. So, you know, my PMBOK guide is on my my iPad mini. It's also on my phones. I don't go anywhere without it because I never know when I'm going to need it. So actually it's on page 20, not 20. Let me find the page here. Okay. Some of this discussion is around page 29 and 30. So page 30 in particular, I'll just read 1.2.6.1. It says, the project business case is a documented economic feasibility study used to establish the validity of the benefits of a selected component lacking sufficient definition and that is used as a basis for the authorization of further project management activities. The business case lists the objectives and the reasons for project initiation. It helps measure the project success at the end of the project against the project objectives. The business case is a project business document that is used throughout the project lifecycle. The business case may be used before the project initiation and may result in a go or no-go decision. You see? And then it goes further to say, a needs assessment often precedes the business case. The needs assessment involves understanding business goals and objectives, issues and opportunities, and recommending proposals to address them. The results of the needs assessment may be summarized in the business case document. And then this whole dialogue continues on page 31. So I'm now imploring you to to read the PMBOK guides to really be able to milk it so you can get to the bottom of task 1, task 2, and even other tasks, you see. So the next page is also important. I know some people do not read the PMBOK guide to this degree, but I want to encourage you to do it. Okay? So do you want to read the next page? Let's do that. Let's read page 31. Okay, I'm going to read page 31. Just at a high level, it says, the process of defining the business need, analyzing the situation, making recommendations, and defining evaluation criteria is applicable to any organization's projects. A business case may include, but is not limited to, documenting the following. Then you've got these big bullets: business needs, determination of what is prompting the need for action, situational statement, documenting the business problem or opportunity to be addressed, including the value to be delivered to the organization, identification of stakeholders affected, and identification of scope. So you see, some of this stuff in the business case is actually going to make its way into other documents of interest as you carry out the project. And then it goes into analysis of the situation, identification of organizational strategies, goals, and objectives, identification of root causes of the problem or main contributors of an opportunity, gap analysis, identification of known risks, identification of critical success factors, identification of decision criteria. You see, the way I'm reading this book now, folks, the way I'm reading the PMBOK guide now is the way I want you to do this. So let me give you a little assignment here on your own, because I guess my voice may bore you. Page 29, 30, 31, 32, read those pages, then go to page 33. Even better, you see, 34, 35. These are pages which a lot of people bypass. But these pages will help you to understand what on earth the PMI is talking about in task 1. You see, let's read it again. Perform project assessment based upon available information. That project assessment they're talking about is all this stuff we've been reading so far about the business case. You see, it talks about meetings with relevant stakeholders. You heard that mention of stakeholders in the business case. So I really implore you, read this content outline, okay? Don't take the content outline lightly. This is a document that your exam experience depends on. Seriously. Planning is the next one. I'm not going to go into it, but here is your assignment. I want you to go to that page I shared in a previous session. In fact, just Google PMP exam failure stamp out. Okay? Search for that page. It's on the Praizion site. It's free, but there is going to 3 hours of video where I break this document down. I break this document down, the PMP exam content outline, into tiny pieces across all the process groups, and I highly recommend that you read that. All right? So let's talk about how PMP exam questions are developed. Now that you know that the first port of call for any question writer needs to be this, the PMP exam content outline. You want to look at that first. After you are comfortable with the content outline, the next step is to begin applying some of these tactics that I'm going to show you as a question writer. Okay? So it is important for you to understand what is at play here. If you're writing PMP exam questions for people and you are not using the content outline, you're not doing it right. You should be using the content outline. Okay? So here are some ideas for how these questions are developed. 1. Do you know an input from an output? You will get questions that are going to be crafted in such a way that they are testing this. Do you know an input from an output? However, they are not necessarily saying, do you know this input from this output? No, the question will be written in such a way that it will test your awareness, your knowledge of this. So, do you know an input from an output? That could be one of the things you're tested on in a scenario. Do you know a tool from a technique? Do you know a process from a process group? Some folks still make the unpardonable mistake of mixing up process names with process group names. That is a big no-no. Before you take the PMP exam, you absolutely want to make sure that you're not mixing up process and process group. If you are, it shows a gap that needs to be closed. You know. Can you tell processes apart? Can you tell the difference between one process of project management and another? If you cannot, I want to encourage you to, for every process you read, make a note. Just make a notebook log of the key benefits of each process and the key definition of each process. You know, it's all there. I highly recommend it. Do you know where you are in a project scenario? Can you tell what makes planning planning? What makes executing executing? How would you tackle a problem? How would you manage change? You see, you could get questions that are testing you on all these things. So as I'm showing it to you folks, you need to be doing an internal check. Can I really answer questions that are problem-solving questions? Do I know what to do first? Do I know what to do next? See? There are steps to follow. Can you fire employees? Do you feel comfortable doing that? Has someone taken the exam? Are you able to answer questions that say you are a PM in a strong matrix or project-oriented firm? See? Because the exam, it will test you based on this assumption. You're a project manager, you're in a strong matrix, but it may not even say you're in a strong matrix. You know, you're going to have to just remember that the project manager in this world is not a pushover, is not a messenger, is not someone that needs to ask for permission every second. See? So you could be asked stuff about that. How about the introduction of noise and distractors? You see, these are all parameters that question writers like me use to test people. We introduce noise. We introduce noise at strategic points. We could introduce noise to test. Are you really focused on the objective? Or are you focused on stuff that has no bearing on the answer? You see, the concept of the best option will also come into play. This is very important. Choosing the best option in project management on these exams is also very important. Also be aware that the weighting of questions could differ. Not every question is the same weight. There's a misconception in many people thinking, oh, every PMP question is the same. No, not every PMP question covers exactly the same number of marks. It doesn't. Some questions could be weighted a lot differently from questions that may be simpler in nature or just different. Okay, so all of these things are coming into play when you take the PMP exam. So let's go a little bit deeper into how some of these questions are written. This first one is called using plausible distractors. And as the name implies, they're using plausible distractors. Only list plausible distractors. In other words, list things that are credible sounding or credible looking. Only list plausible distractors, even if the number of options per question changes. Write the options so they are homogeneous in content. So they all look the same. Nothing sticks out as, oh, this one is too long, or this one just looks different. The language sounds different. No, you want to use the same feel, the same language. And that's how the questions on the PMP exam are. This is why people struggle. I have students say, Phil, it all looks the same. All these answers, is there really a different answer? I often get students saying, is this really different? Because everything appears to be the same to them, unfortunately. So, you want to be aware that on the exam, a lot of stuff looks the same. It looks so identical that you end up scratching your head wondering, how on earth am I going to answer this? How am I going to tackle this? You see? And something else that I guess is being done, and I'm not saying this is the Holy Grail, but I'm just saying a lot of people that write these questions use answers that have been given in the past and been known to be trick answers, or known to be, let me put it this way, known to be plausible. Let me put it mildly. Plausible and competitive answers that could stand up to the real answer. Let's put it that way. Okay? So, using plausible distractors for the wrong response options is very predominant on these exams. And that's why a lot of people say it all looks the same. It came down to 2, but they all seemed correct. It's because of this plausible distractors clause. Okay? So here is an example of plausible distractors. What is the first step in project management after authorization? Create the subsidiary plans, create the project charter, create the project statement of work and seek approval, or create and sign the agreements, in other words, contracts, for external projects. So can you answer that one? I typically give my students 1 minute, 12 seconds to answer questions for the PMP exam, and I asked them, can you guess? In 1 minute 12 seconds. So if you're watching this after the fact, you can pause it and see if you can get the answer right. Okay? So spoiler alert. Here's the key to this question. You can see that two options appear pretty identical and the other two appear pretty identical as well. But what gives the question away is what is the first step in project management after authorization? After. So B is authorization. Cannot be correct. A is plausible as far as it could be the correct answer. C, the project statement of work, that should have been done already before authorization, and signing the agreement should have been done before the authorization. So the answer is create the subsidiary plans. But do you see how it was crafted? They all look the same, so you got to be careful in that regard. Okay, here is a second tip, the second thing that a question writer would do. And here it says, use a question format. Experts encourage multiple choice items to be prepared as questions rather than incomplete statements. So, example of an incomplete statement is the capital of California is in, but a direct question format would be, in which of the following cities is the capital of California? So you see the way the question is asked is a direct question format. And question writers on these professional exams, they use a direct question format. They're going to direct the question straight at you. They're not going to use these incomplete sentences. So keep that in mind. And that's why the questions sound a little bit more pinching, right? Here's a direct question format. In which project management process group does the mention of change requests first occur in a process? Is it in initiating? Is it in plan procurement management? Is it in planning? Is it in develop project management plan? I'll give you 1 minute and 12 seconds to answer this question. Let's go. Okay, time up. Let's take a look at the answer. The answer to this question is none other, I'm going to highlight it so you can see it, is none other than I think the answer should be A. What do you think? Is that a correct statement from me? You know where to find the answer. You got to go to chapter 13. Chapter 13 will be the deciding factor. Chapter 13, basically 13.1. Because 13.1 is identify stakeholders. And in identify stakeholders, what do you see? Let's go to page 504, where we have 13.1, identify stakeholders under the project stakeholder management overview. If you take a look like I am to the right page, you can see that change request is an output of identify stakeholders, which is in initiating. So when you take a look at the question again, in which project management, they didn't say process, they said process group. So right off the bat, those that are not process groups, we can get rid of. That's not a process group. Neither is that. You see how these questions are? This would have been a contender, but it's not that. It's this. Because in identify stakeholders, we have change requests as an output. You see? So you got to be thinking like these question writers. That's why I'm showing you this, so that you can be a step ahead. All right? Let's take a look at the next point here. The next point that these question writers use is that they emphasize higher level thinking. So it's one thing to have a question written based on just knowledge, but they go a step further. It's not just knowledge. They go a step further to include other things in the mix. It's not just knowledge. It's the application of the knowledge. And that's what makes the PMP exam very different from the CAPM exam and many other exams. A lot of exams I've been into, they don't really put you into scenario mode. They just ask you knowledge questions. And while that isn't a bad thing, knowledge questions do not exercise you to the fullest extent. So emphasizing higher level thinking. Take a read here. It says, use memory plus application questions. That means not only do you have the knowledge, you also need to apply the knowledge. It says these questions require students to recall principles, rules, or facts in a real life context. You know, putting someone into a real life context, it changes a lot, doesn't it? It does. And this is what this point underscores. The key to preparing memory plus application questions is to place the concept in a life situation or context that requires the student to recall the facts and then apply or transfer the application of those facts into a situation. This is classic PMP. Classic PMP. This is what they do all day long. They put you into a scenario, and then you got to remember what exactly the knowledge is, pinpoint precise, and then you got to apply it. You see? So this stuff ain't cheap. Higher level thinking. This is PMP all over. Let's take a look at one of these. Which of the following becomes work performance information? So I know you guys are going to get this one right. I ask this one almost every week on the channel. Come back. Here we go. Is it work performance data? Is it work performance reports? Is it information management systems? Or is it project communications? I'm going to give you the proverbial 1 minute, 12 seconds from our friends at the PM and I. Go for it. See if you can answer in 1 minute 12. Easy, easy peasy. All right. Well, I know that was just so ridiculously easy, wasn't it? The answer, of course, is WPD. All right. The answer is work performance data, which is an output of direct and managed project work, and that becomes work performance information when it's analyzed in these monitoring and controlling processes. Okay? Very good. So those 3 points, we're going to build further on that to give you some more clarity about what goes on when these exam questions are written. So taking these approaches are very good, but these approaches are not enough, you know. The way questions are written is to take the information and write it in a very scenario-ish way. So let me underscore point 3 one more time. Let's take a look at this one more time. Here is a question written in this manner, okay? Joe has just completed an analysis of certain base observations and paperwork in order to create a detailed breakdown of the consequence of these observations. Which of the following describes this paperwork? Is it work performance data? Is it work performance reports? Hold on, let me get it back up. Is it work performance data? Is it work performance reports? Is it project documents, or is it project communications? I'll give you a 1 minute 12-second timer again. I don't think you need that long though. All right, here's the answer. The answer is work performance data. This is pretty much the same question, but we have reworded it and put a scenario around it. Can you see the difference between this question as it is now versus the one I showed you before? Let's go to the one before this. This is the one before. Which of the following becomes work performance information? This sounds so easy. But when you dress it up into something like this, you are dealing with a lot of distractors, and you're dealing with language that is direct. You're dealing with options that look homogeneous in content. You see? So this is all 3 of those points, all 3 of those concepts put together. And that's why questions on the PMP exam look the way they do. That is why a lot of deliberateness and thought is put into them. Here's another example. Here's a very basic, easy question, which I'm guessing everyone should get. Which of the following is the 80-20 principle? 100% of defects come from just 20% of the causes. 80% of defects stem from 20% of the causes. Or is it 20% of the defects stem from 60% of the causes, or 80% of the defects can be tracked to 100% of the causes? I'll give you a 1 minute 12-second timer. And the answer, my friends, obviously B. 80% of defects stem from 20% of the causes. Now, I'm hoping that didn't take you very long. That should have been a pretty easy one for you to tackle. It should have been pretty straightforward. But going a step further, we can take a look at how this question becomes something totally different. So let me show you what this question could be turned into, how we can take a question like this and make it a little bit more beefed up. Okay? Which of the following best illustrates Pareto's principle or Pareto's law? A, B, C, or D? Remember, it says best illustrates. So you want to choose the closest. I'll give you a minute, 12 seconds. Again, this is an example of how you take a question as easy as the one you just saw, because I showed you the question just before this. Now we've taken that question and dressed it up into something more scenario driven. So 1 minute, 12 seconds. All right, time up. Let's take a look at the answer. So, lots of these options look identical. Okay? You see some recurring numbers, 8, 1, 0, and 2. But when you boil it all down, the best option is B for this reason. Let's take a look at option A. John, a manager in an inspection, detects 80 defective rubber ducks in 20 boxes of rubber ducks. So if you know the 80-20 principle, you should be looking for 80 out of 100 to be mentioned, not 80 out of 20 boxes. That doesn't make sense. So even though this looks a little bit correct, it does not convert over properly to what is being discussed, and therefore this cannot be right. Taking a look at B, it says 20 defective rubber ducks in a batch of 100 rubber ducks. Okay? So 20% of defects, 20 out of 100, and 80% of the causes are responsible for 20% of the defects. That is kind of close to B. C, Katie inspects 10 oranges and finds 8 defects. If it was 2 out of 10, this would be better, so this is marked wrong. And last but not least, Sean, a production manager's boxing carrots, 2 out of every 10 has mold and fungus. This is due to 2 out of 10 assigned causes. This makes it wrong. If it was 8 out of 10 assigned causes, that would be right. Now, while Pareto is not really a topic that has come up in the 6th edition, as someone who is leaving no stones unturned, it's something you want to be aware of. But I'm using this to illustrate, what these concepts really translate to, okay, in terms of the question writers, okay? So that is another example. Which of the following is a group decision-making technique? plurality and autocratic avoidance, majority and consensus, unanimity and majority, or consensus and democracy. This should be a very easy one for you. You should be able to weed out the bogus options. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds for this. All right, the answer, unanimity and majority. Now, this is a very bare bones, basic question, very, very basic. And if you've read the 6th edition, you can immediately see where this is from. You know, I'm guessing you can already see where this is from. It's not that big a deal. But when we dress it up, it takes on a new life. And that's what we're going to be doing here. Let's dress this up a little bit. And here is a question dressed up. Same concept, but we've taken the 3 points I showed you. You're trying to make sure that this is a situational sounding question with a direct question at the end. Direct approach at the end. Okay? So I'll let you read it, and I'll give you 1 minute and 12 seconds to answer it. All right, here's the answer. The answer is autocratic decision making. Frank used a power position to win. Now, while this is not necessarily a PMP question answering session, I do want to show you why certain options were wrong, just for learning. So plurality is the largest block in the group decides, but this says they had more than half. So it says plurality, but it's describing majority. So for that reason, we're going to exit out. The next one, majority, it says they had the largest block of votes. This is describing plurality, not majority, okay? C, autocratic decision making. Frank used a power position to win. And last but not least, unanimity. Frank's team all voted alike and ended up winning. So this would be more like consensus, not what was described here as unanimity. For that reason, we're going to cancel that. And that's how C is the best option. But if you really read what is going on, you got these teams voting. John, Jill, Frank, and Jane are managers of different teams. Jane's team voted 20% of the votes. That should be Jane. Jane's team voted 20% of the votes. Frank's team voted 40% of the votes. Jill's team voted 20% of the votes. And Jane's team voted 15% of the votes. Okay, looks like we got a manager who was not mentioned. Okay. What is the most likely reason Frank's team won? So even though it seems like there's noise in here, okay, through the process of elimination, we can just choose the best option, the most correct option. So if you're on an exam where you have options that make you scratch your head, you feel that the information given in the question is faulty, it could be noise there to distract you from choosing the best option. And here, obviously, this has come down to a definition question. You see? But in this case, it says, what is the most likely reason Frank's team won? The most likely reason is the correct possibility. Everything else is not a correct possibility or definition. All right? So I hope that helps you kind of better understand how some of these questions are written and what to do in such instances where you have questions with noise, incorrect information, which is noise itself, or incomplete information. You just got to handle it and go with the best thing, okay? So let's move on here a little bit. Let's take a look at one more. So this one says, an Ishikawa is being used to analyze certain defects found on the project. This is done in plan quality management, perform quality assurance, control quality, or control procurements. So you're using an Ishikawa to analyze certain defects. Where would this be done? Where do you analyze defects? All right. Your 1 minute 12 seconds seems to be up, folks. So let's see what the answer is. Well. Control quality. Obviously, control quality is where you do inspection, and don't think it's strange when you analyze defects that you find from your inspection. Okay? Now, this question has been taken and rewritten with these principles that I shared with you. Again, we've taken these 3 principles and we have dressed up the question. Okay? So if you are just joining, we're talking about how PMP exam questions are developed. I've been giving students ideas about how these questions are written, and I'm doing this to make folks smarter. So we talked about using plausible distractors. The distractors are homogeneous in content. We talked about using direct questions, and then we talked about using a principle whereby you use a scenario which will test both knowledge and the application of knowledge. And that third scenario was emphasize higher level thinking. And emphasizing higher level thinking is going to take a student's typical question, dress it up in a scenario, and make it sound real world. The key to preparing memory plus application questions is to place the concept in a live situation or context that requires the student to first recall the facts and then apply or transfer the application of those facts into a situation. And that, folks, is what makes the PMP exam what it is. Very situation driven. You can kind of feel where the knowledge is in the middle of the question, but because of the scenario, it's written in such a compelling way that it tends to throw people off sometimes, okay? And that's why I'm sharing this with you, so that as you're looking at the questions, you'll say, okay, that's a scenario plus, or that is just using a direct questioning approach. So let's take a look at the question that I was showing you. It says you're working for a project to improve innovation in procurement in the health sector through extended exchange of knowledge. I'm going to let you read this, and I'm going to give you 1 minute 12 seconds to answer the question and see what you come up with. So, my friends, if you had been watching all along, you probably sniffed out what the answer is. I bet you have. Well, the answer, of course, is exactly the same one as the previous question. Now, let me just show you. Previous question, this was the question. See how plain Jane it looks? Nothing extraordinary about it. But look at it now. Look at it all dressed up. This could give you a run for your money. You see? So I'm showing you this so that you become more aware, craftier, more savvy in your approach to selecting options on the PMP exam. You gotta get into the head of those question writers and know what exactly they're up to. Okay? So compare and contrast these questions. Here's a typical question from our 2020 quizzes. Your WBS has a troublesome element named 1.4.1.5, which has been tough to further decompose into any lower levels. This node is what? Now, while this question sounds a little bit incomplete, you can use the process of elimination here. First of all, it cannot be a code of accounts because that's the numbering system. This is a code of accounts. So it cannot be that. It doesn't make sense. We don't call a WBS node a code of accounts. Okay? And then it says 1.4.1.5, a troublesome element which has been tough to further decompose into any lower levels. Well, maybe that's because that is the lowest level in the WBS. You see. But anyway, taking a look at this, this has got four levels. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it cannot be above level 5. Or can it be above level 5? This could actually be above level 5. So this is 4 levels and level 4 is above level 5. So I will actually keep this. I won't strike this out. I'll just put a question mark here. A planning package. Well, it could be a planning package on a large WBS. But do you know for sure that 1.4.1.5 is a planning package? And in the same token, do you know that it is a work package? It could be a work package. Maybe it cannot be decomposed any further because that is the lowest level, but we don't know that. It has equal likelihood of it being a planning package. So those are a bit shady. We don't know those for sure. But you know what? One thing you do know from this is that it is definitely above a level 5. But we don't know if level 4 is a planning package, so we have to get rid of that. And while it sounds convincing, we don't know that level 4 is a work package. But we do know that level 4 is above level 5. So the correct answer, after all, is option C. Okay? I should have given a spoiler alert because this is from one of our questions in the learning management system. So I should have given full disclosure. I don't think it's a good idea for you to be watching this if you are going to be taking the scope quiz. So while option B and D sounded plausible to me at first, on further discovery I realized they're not the best. You see how these questions are. You got to beware on your exam for things such as this. Okay? But I hope that the little time that we've spent, well, not so little time, spent about going to an hour now, but I'm hoping that this gives you a renewed understanding of what you're up against on the PMP exam and any other PMI exam, because the questions are not just casually written. The questions are very well written. Let me give you another question here. Spoiler alert, if you are one of our students on the LMS, this is going to give, it's going to spill the beans. So it says CPI and SPI are equal. EV equals 500, PV equals 600. What is AC? So to tackle this, you got to take advantage of knowing earned value, knowing plan value, and knowing that if earned value and plan value have been given, then in this case the CPI will be exactly the same as the SPI. Therefore, the denominator will be the same for EV divided by AC as EV divided by PV. You see? So in this instance, PV will have to be equal to AC, which would make this the correct answer. 600 would be the correct answer. So some of these questions, you're just going to have to infer from what they said here to get this. Okay? But it takes some awareness and some thinking. And the more aware you are of these topics, the better you're going to be. You know, the more aware you are, the better you're going to be. So be aware. Be aware of these things. Okay? You may not have thought what makes SPI equal to CPI, but now you're aware. This question or type of question will never trick you again. Okay, well, so far we've been talking about how PMP exam question writers think. And in the beginning, I asked those of our friends who are watching live to chat in, just so we time stamp it so you know that this is live. This is on the East Coast, pretty early in the morning. Let's put it that way. For those of you in the UK, this is 9 a.m. your time in the UK on the 29th of December. So, you know, some of you are going to be watching this after the fact. Some of you are watching it live. But if you got questions, don't hesitate to ask. I would always be happy to answer any questions you have. Okay? So let's try and land this ship. Let's bring this to a close. The examiners usually keep options length similar. They avoid making the correct answer the long or short answer, and notoriously are not always grammatically correct. I've heard a lot of complaints from students on the exam, and they say, why on earth is the language off? It's also a distractor. Not always, but occasionally. They do not always use simple, precise, and unambiguous wording. Sometimes the wording could be pretty tricky. Let's put it that way. Okay? And with that, we have come to the end of my review of how the question writers think. And I want to leave you with a thought from Imran, one of my students, one of my bosses, who is now PMP, and he shares this image of how dogged, rugged, tough, and dedicated he was towards PMP exam success. Imran would do this every day in his office. Page 25. You got to put in some effort to get page 25 down, and the more page 25 is under your control, the better it's going to be. I'll share with you a few tips from Imran. Imran said, I can confirm they don't let you take notes. And Imran's experience was based on when they just started doing this. So you're not going to be allowed to take notes, of course, prior to the test. No brain dumping, okay? So he said, I can confirm that they do not let you take notes prior to the test. So that ate up about 20 minutes of my time. So he wrote down all the processes and the key tools and techniques. He said the first hour of the test was horrific. He has some rather dramatic language going on here, but I can understand. In my case, it was horrific as well. He said I got about 5 math questions, all straightforward, to where I did not even have to look at the formulas. All information was given. I did not have to figure out anything. Almost all questions had to do with CPI, SPI, and a few where they show you the S-curve. I got about 10 diagramming questions. You have to draw them, as 2 of them had loops and didn't go anywhere. The rest was situational questions. So he shared some interesting perspectives of this, lots of change request type of questions, and talks about these theories not appearing on the exam, and the questions on expected monetary value that you see in the PMBOK guide. Take those seriously. Take those seriously. Okay, and he goes further to say, know all your inputs, know your outputs, know your tools and techniques, know your what happens next question. He said he watched my mainline question again and again until he knew it. And he talks about all of those formulas, all of those things that you encounter in your studying, know them for your real exam, because they could very well just show up. Okay? So I want to thank you for joining me. I'm going to close now and allow you guys to get some studying done. I'll allow you to get some, if you're on the East Coast, in the USA, you probably need sleep. Let you get some sleep on. Those of you who are on the West Coast, you might be squeaking by with a few hours of sleep. Maybe 5 hours. You could still wake up at 7 and be productive. But if you're on the East Coast, I really hope you're getting some sleep. My friends in other parts of the world, Saudi Arabia, India, everywhere else other than the US, perhaps you're awake. I wish you all the best. Remember, this is the 2019 strategy for PMP exam prep. I am going to be sharing with you 24 hours non-stop. Inspiration, motivation, information to get you in ship shape to be PMP certified. I need you to be PMP certified and to help other people. Help your firm, help people around you, better manage projects. That's what it's all about. Okay? So in closing, I'm going to ask you one more time. If you're watching live, I always enjoy answering questions. I've done enough asking for today. I've asked you enough questions. I probably asked you about 10 questions in this presentation. I don't need to do the asking. You do. So do you have questions or concerns or comments that I can address? Going once, going twice, going thrice. Well, thank you all very much. I appreciate you. Thank you for joining me. And I'll see you in another touch point session on this PMP exam 2019 strategy. But this goes far beyond 2019. This is strategy, period. Whether it's 2020, 2021, whenever you're watching this, this is going to outlive the 2019 label. So just know that this will stand the test of time to help those getting ready for the exam. Questions written on the exam, like I said, the three things: homogeneous in content, direct questions, and going above just asking a question but putting you into a scenario. Those three things, they have stood the test of time and they will continue to. Okay? Thank you all very much, and I'll see you again in another touch point. Bye for now.